Mike and Debbie Whitmire to come and share a little testimony time with us. So speak loud so we can hear you.
Good morning. So,
You're welcome.
I have done this a lot, sharing my testimony in one-on-one, small groups, groups this size, and even to a couple hundred or so people in the past. Debbie has done this on her own with ladies in groups. We've never done this together. So if I can get through this without crying, I don't know. So the big guy kind of is emotional at times. So I'd like to just start off Romans 8:28. This has just become very evident through the years of my life here. And how we know that all things work together for good to those who love God and those who are called according to his purpose. And the thing that God can use for good is mind-blowing. I don't understand it. I don't understand how he does it. How a guy who has struggled in the past with wanting to kill himself over his sins and the destruction that he has caused, and how God has turned that to help others and to build a marriage that's brand new. My wife and I, we're best friends today. We haven't always been that way. So we've known each other for 26 years next month. We've been married going on 19 years. I grew up in a kind of a typical Christian household. Grew up in church, going to youth group. Going into my 6th grade year, I accepted Christ at youth camp. I said a prayer, I walked the aisle. Years to follow, youth camps, I rededicated my life. Right? I did all that. I became an adult. My father died when I was almost 19. Had no idea that trauma was going to develop into addictions in my life. And the pattern that I learned as a young child, a lot because of my father, because he was a very heavy-handed disciplinarian. Probably a lot of abuse mixed in with that my mom still disagrees with me at times. But it taught me how to lie. I became a very good liar as a child to avoid the consequences of things that a typical knuckleheaded kid is going to do, right? I didn't have a father really willing to talk to me about those bad mistakes. It was just beat me to a pulp to teach me that way. So I don't want that. I'm going to lie about it. So as an adult, what am I going to do when I'm doing things I don't want to do? I'm going to lie about it because my wife's not going to accept me. My mother won't accept me. People around me won't accept me because I'm doing bad things. So as we got together, we met at church. First Baptist Church in Houston, co-ed volleyball, you know. It's better to go to church and meet somebody than go to the bar. So that's where we met. Quickly, probably started doing things pretty wrong. This is our relationship.
Very wrong.
You know,
Well, we both thought we were believers. We went to church. I was in single Bible studies, but of course, we were doing everything wrong as a dating relationship. Yeah.
so lots of immorality just with her and I, right? You know, dating for 7.5, 8 years, whatever it was before we got married. The whole time, I'm living a whole separate life. I was never faithful to my wife a day of our relationship until 12 years ago. My father, growing up, smoked and drank a lot of alcohol. Would teach me, don't ever pick up a cigarette. It's horrible. Nastiest habit I ever done. But when you're old enough, you can have some drinks and be responsible. Just don't overdo it. So the 21-year-old guy who had never had a drink of alcohol in his life, on my birthday I had my first beer. Didn't like it. I think that's a pretty universal thing with a lot of people, is it tastes nasty. We met, we're dating. I'd have a 6-pack of beer in my refrigerator. It would last 6 months, 8 months. I didn't really partake in it. The friends I had at the time, nobody was big drinkers. As I got into my first career as a firefighter, and in that world, alcohol is a big part of it, and morality is a big part of it. So some men that I began to spend a lot of time with kind of taught me how to drink, and I began to love it. And it was a social thing, a way to relate with other guys, and fellowship, and have a good time. And that grew through the years that I had to have it. To the point of 12 years ago, an average evening would be about 15 beers. I thought that was normal because everybody did that in my circle.
I interject too.
Yeah.
So I grew up in a home where alcohol was fine. My parents drank, but they drank socially. They weren't never to excess. So I was taught it's okay to drink as long as you drink responsibly. Well, when I was in college, I definitely wasn't drinking responsibly because no one around me was. So I was influenced by that. But as I look back, I guess I try to, when I talk to people, I try to express to them how alcohol can be so dangerous, even if you don't have a problem with it. Because I was brought up in a home where everybody was so responsible. But what it did, it kind of blinded me to the fact that my husband had a problem. Because when I met him, he didn't drink. I drank socially. And then he started to drink. And then he drank more and more and more. But I couldn't see that I thought, well, he sure drinks a lot. But he can handle it. He wasn't passed out. He was very functional. But I just couldn't see it because I think I was taught that it's okay. It's acceptable. It's fine.
On a weekend, I could drink, for the Saturday, I would drink a 30-pack.
And he'd be fine.
I was going to Home Depot and everywhere. And then, if I was going out that night, I could double that and make it home. And I thought this was normal. I thought everybody did.
Well, everyone around us did do that, so it was normal in the circle that we were in.
So, the whole time through the years of our marriage, up until 12 years ago, it steadily grew of what she saw, my alcohol intake. It was a very bad marriage, very rocky, lots of problems. We were sleeping in separate beds at times. She wanted kids, I didn't. It's many problems I think that many couples face, sorting stuff out through the years. But the whole time I had this secret life that she didn't know about. Nobody did. My closest friends didn't know. So, 12 years ago, her, my mother, they knew something was really wrong with me. I find this out later. They were in a kind of a season of prayer, praying for me. Just, God, please reveal what's going on with this guy, so we can know what's happening. So in a drunken stupor one night, She's taking care of the kids. They're about a year and a half, 2 years old or so. I'm doing my thing in the kitchen, preparing dinner, drinking alcohol, going through my ritual. I left the computer open. She had no access to my emails and stuff. I went to bed, and I go to work the next morning, and I get a phone call, and back to back to back to back phone calls. So that's, something's wrong. I need to get hold of my wife. And the moment she answered the phone, I knew that my life as I knew it was over. I could just tell by the tone of her voice. So in my email, she found out all of my immorality, or just the beginning of it. So that propelled us on a path that was very difficult. At that time, I knew everything I had, I'd lost. My wife, my twins, my reputation, any money I had, any respect I had, everything was going to be over. My sins had found me out. For years, I had prayed for God to remove all my struggles. Please take this from me, but just don't let me get caught by my wife. Pretty common. It's real funny to me today when I talk to men, because guys don't want to be taught. But that's some of the biggest blessings right there, is when God reveals our sins to others, because then we can start dealing with it. So that afternoon, I was at work, and in my dormitory there at the fire station, I laid down face first in that bed in the dark, scared to death, crying, and I said a prayer. Because I grew up in church, right? I was a Christian. So I thought. I said the prayer, I walked the aisle, I've been baptized. I haven't opened a Bible in 15 years. I prayed, dear God, I need some help. And I'm not going to sit here and ask you to do something ridiculous just to magically make this go away today. But I just need to know if you're real. If you're real, if this whole Jesus thing is real, if this whole Christianity thing is real, I've got to know. Somehow you have to show me. So, as luck would have it, or the Lord finagled it, my truck had been totaled. I didn't have wheels at the time. My wife had dropped me off to work that morning. So, that afternoon, she comes and picks me up from work. I had a guy come in to work the rest of my shift for me. She picks me up. I'm fully expecting to be physically assaulted. You name it. Mom's watching the kids at home. She comes and gets me. We sit in a parking lot behind my fire station for about 3.5 hours, and I unload on her secrets of my life. What I heard was, we have a problem. You have a problem. We need to get you help. There was plenty of screaming. There was plenty of cussing. There was plenty of anger from her. But there was this overriding, we need help. And I thought to myself, that's weird. That's not the reaction I thought. We have to go home, get the kids. Basically, I'm forced to now tell my mom the real side of me. I expected the same thing from my own mother, cry about anger. I get from her hugging, embracing, tears, telling me it's going to be okay, that God is here, and we're going to get y'all through this. So, Mom leaves the house, she's in another room, we're separated, there's, obviously a lot of unpleasantry going on. Sometime that evening, I picked up my Bible. Same Bible I had as a teenager. I opened it to Galatians 5. Now, I grew up in church. I knew the Old Testament and the New Testament. I knew Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Okay, Revelation. It's really kind of all I knew. For somebody who grew up in church and claimed to be a Christian, I knew nothing about Paul him writing all those epistles and I learned about King David in counseling 3 weeks later, that was the same David who cut off Goliath's head. I was very ignorant. So I opened my Bible and went to Galatians 5. And I just started reading about the needs of the flesh. And I read these sins and all but one peg me. And then I read the next sentence, that those who practice such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. I thought, this is kind of strange. The one place in the Bible kind of talks about me. The next night, I went to Ephesians 5. I didn't know where to turn to find Ephesians. It just opened, and I read Ephesians 5. Telling me the same thing. Through the days that followed, reading Colossians 3, I'm going through Corinthians. I'm reading all of this in the Bible that's saying somebody like me is not saved. The fruit of my life are showing me that. So, she gets on the phone. Yes.
So I had just found out that basically my life was a lie. I knew I had a bad marriage, but I had no idea how bad it was. And so that was just earth-shattering. So it felt like everything, I felt like I had died. My marriage had died, I had died. So I was just traumatized big time. And I didn't know what to do. But the Lord reminded me in His Word, we always hear the Christmas story where the angel comes and tells Mary she's going to give birth, and he says to her, "Nothing is impossible with God." And that became my verse, nothing is impossible with God. And I thought, this is impossible. This is absolutely impossible. There's no way. But I decided I'd give God a chance because He said nothing's impossible. And so I set my mind to believe that. And I'm very much someone who, if there's a problem, I want to fix it. And so I started researching. I went online and I started looking at counselors. The first thing we did, though, before even that, we went to talk to
Well, the church we were
the
going to in
pastor at our
Cyprus.
church. Yeah.
We went immediately to him after service one Sunday morning, and he took us in his office, and he meant well.
He did.
And he prayed with us, and gave me a book to read, and kind of sent us on our way. And I was a guy wrapped up in addiction, and I needed some real help, and he wasn't prepared.
That felt like a slap in the face to me. We went in, we told him all this that was going on, and he did mean well, and he prayed for us. He gave me a book on addiction, which scared me half to death when I read it. So, yeah, he was very unprepared, and I think that's very common, that pastors are unprepared. But unfortunately, what we're describing, it sounds unusual, but I think it's very, very common. It's all the secrets that everybody comes to church with, and we carry them right here, and we don't tell anybody about them, but we're living them out at home. So anyway, that didn't help me at all. So I was online researching and stumbled across it wasn't a counselor at a church, but he was a consultant that worked with a church that does counseling, and I contacted him. And 3 weeks later, we were in his office doing a 3-day intensive with him. You want to tell about that?
Yeah, we're gonna run out of time, but
Yeah.
just the overview of that man who I hated for quite a while, experience, brought me into the truth for the first time in my life, and it gave her, through that experience, that counseling, the real truth on what she was dealing with and the path to go forward. Through that, I got hooked up with a group through Second Baptist in Houston. At the time, was a real big group for guys dealing with addictions, and I met some lifelong friends in that group. It's amazing the friendships you develop with men who are shoulder to shoulder with you, iron sharpening iron. and guys who are a little bit farther ahead of you that can pull you along and show you the way.
And I as well, I was plugged in with a group there for women experiencing similar things that I was going through. And they were like a lifeline for me, and a counselor led it. And I'd go there every week and drag my two-year-olds over there with me. And just really, where we could really sit and talk. We didn't have to hold our secrets anymore. We could talk about the real things in our lives. And it was very healing. So that was really helpful.
So to go, we could sit here for 3 hours and share everything that we've been through. But the struggle of me coming out of all my sins, taking 2 steps back, sometimes 2 steps forward, sometimes 1 step back. Working on that, very hard road. The first year was just horrendous, and then after that, it would get better over
Still
time.
doing this for quite some time.
Yeah. Just real quick, through all this, my wife, she thought she was a Christian. And then, I don't know, a couple years into it, here I am, watching my wife get rebaptized because she, through seeking, had determined she had never truly come to Christ, even though she had done a lot of the same rituals. So, Romans 8:28, how God can use the filth that I chose to live in for years, how she realized through that, she needed to get right with God. Of course, I'm trying to get right with God, seeking Him, and how through the years we have been able to use this to help others. And it's grown a relationship in us that God didn't rebuild the marriage that was broken. He created a brand new one. And people who meet us today, don't know anything about our past, would never know things we've gone through, what I used to be, the idiot, the way I used to live. I try to help guys now. I'm in a group now trying to mentor some guys going through a lot of the same struggles. She's leading a group of the wives who are married to people like that. And one of the biggest things I try to get through to men is to take the Bible serious. If the Bible says do something, do it. If it says don't do something, don't do it. Because there's prices to pay. And there's rewards. God will reward us for seeking after Him.
Yes.
So, I know we're out of time. I guess the biggest thing I'd just like to leave is when I prayed that prayer on that bed just over 12 years ago, for Him to reveal Himself to me, I thought kind of in my head, I just needed something that night. But here I am over 12 years later, and I'm standing here in front of y'all with my wife and best friend, able to share this, and that's an answer to that prayer. It's continual when David does that. So, you have anything else to say?
No, we said a lot.
In just this church, there's been problems. Just in recent times right now, there's been some broken people that have had to leave this church. And we as people find it very easy to cast judgment and to look at somebody else because they're screwing up, and we want to shame them. But we're all broken people, and nobody's perfect. And even when somebody's doing something really bad, even to their own family, God can use that. And God can take those very same bad things, radically change that person and that family from the inside out, and use that to reach others. And, it's all about secrets. It's all, we hold things in. The Bible over and over talks about light. Jesus is light, the truth and the light. And when we bring things out, as people, we don't like to share that, right? Pride, you know, we want people to think we're doing okay. But there's so much power in letting people know we're not doing okay. And seeking help, the iron sharpening iron, and just to be there for one another.
Yeah, being real with one another and not judging one another, and loving each other. The women that are in the little support group that we have, that's the one thing they all say. They all come and they say, I haven't told anybody. I haven't told anybody. And they feel so much shame. And it's not even their shame they're feeling. They're feeling their husband's shame. And it's so freeing for them just to be able to talk and know that they're loved and they're accepted. And that God, there's nothing impossible for God. There's no situation that's impossible for Him. So as long as we follow Him, we do what He says.
Thank you, guys.